Domestic Violence New South Wales released its strategic plan last year. That's now a 3-year plan that identifies 5 focus areas for work. And one of those focus areas is around systemic change and thought leadership. And under those systemic change and thought leadership pieces, we have 6 advocacy priorities. And one won't surprise you all and why we're here today, which is around housing and homelessness. And that advocacy priority is around that we advocate as a peak body around sustainable housing pathways for women, children, and LGBTQIA+ people experiencing gendered violence. And I'm really glad Trish brought up children and young people today, because that's so significant in terms of the intersection of domestic and family violence, and something I'm really passionate about. So under these advocacy, it's all very well having an advocacy ask, but you've got to make sure you've got something that sits beneath it and something that we can actually implement and do. So under that advocacy ask, we're advocating as a peak body, again with our colleagues at Y Foundations and Homelessness, partly, to deliver 5,000 new social and affordable homes every year in New South Wales for the next 10 years, and that's something we've all been asking for some time. We want the investment of $500 million in a maintenance program across existing social housing portfolio. We know that refurbishment work is just as important as new buildings. We want to see an increase to the specialist homelessness services by 25%, and that's a minimum. We want to see investment in social housing for specific marginalised communities, including older women, Aboriginal-owned housing, people with disabilities, and young people. We want to ensure new refuges are built for purpose and managed by high-quality domestic and family violence specialist, intersectional feminist organisations. So that for us is about that trauma-informed lens. That's about something that's community-embedded, and that's about experience and that non-judgmental, humanistic, person-centred work, which we're really passionate about at Domestic Violence New South Wales. So the New South Wales Women's Alliance, another update we wanted to give you here today is around the election platform. We know that there's an election platform in March 2023, and we've basically put together with the New South Wales Women's Alliance 7 calls to action to end gendered violence, including safe and appropriate housing for everybody experiencing and recovering from domestic and family violence. The New South Wales Women's Alliance want to ensure all victim survivors, no matter what their age, background or income, can access a safe home. In our housing call to action, we're calling for the New South Wales Government to fund long-term safe housing, including $2.6 billion annually for the next decade for 5,000 new social housing dwellings per year to house tens of thousands of people on wait lists, increase transitional housing by 50%, and increase the percentage of affordable housing in new developments. And we're asking for everyone to pledge their support by going online now. So there's a great website that the New South Wales Alliance have with DV New South Wales, and you can pledge your support there, which would be great. And I have to just say, it's so wonderful to see so many different services, government, non-government here today, because that's, as I think Trina said, the power of collaboration is going to be really, really important, that we come together, we can talk, we can network, we can have some of the more difficult conversations, do things offline, online, but we need to be making these calls, and we really, as I know, as a sector, need to see a difference. And I do think the time is now as well. I think there's some incredible changes happening. I mean, I've been away for 8 months, and I cannot get over how many announcements and things are happening in the housing space, and now it's about that safe implementation and quality assurance. Another thing that got released while I was away, and we did a huge amount of advocacy leading up to this, was the national plan. So a quick update again from Domestic Violence New South Wales' perspective. We were pleased to see the next national plan recognise safe housing, and I know that so many came together to ensure that housing was on the agenda. We know that it was missed. In fact, it wasn't on the agenda, and we had to have our own get-together about it, but we were very loud and noisy about it, so really pleased to see that that's been included in the plan. However, for the plan to be truly successful, we need to see stronger funding commitments from the federal government, along with specific measurable targets in the upcoming 5-year plans that we know are taking place now. Unfortunately, last week's budget announcement did not show the strong commitment to social housing that we need, with only 5,500 new homes across the country. So that's the whole country for women and children fleeing domestic and family violence. So again, we know we need so much more. There is also $56 million shortfall in the federal funding for the Equal Remuneration Order, the ERO supplement, and I know, again, there's been some talk between the peaks around that and the advocacy that needs to be done. So funding is in place now, but expires in June 2023, and I know that will be really concerning a lot of our member organisations and those services here today. This equates to the wages of approximately 560 workers as well, so that's really concerning when we know we have a workforce development issue as it is. So to know that we're going to be losing workers and not being able to fund those brilliant specialist experienced workers is simply not good enough. So we will be continuing to bang the drum on that and working closely with our counterparts in New South Wales Government and, of course, the federal government around that key advocacy when those implementation plans move forward. So core and cluster, wow. Again, left 8 months ago, and gosh, a lot's happened since. And wonderful Claudia's here today, and I'm sure she'll be happy to network with people, and she'll just wave in the break just if you've got any queries or questions from our perspective. As Trina's mentioned, we're working in collaboration with Homelessness New South Wales and the Aboriginal Community Housing Industry Association, ACHIA, to deliver a programme of sector engagement, capacity building and grants to support organisations to participate in the government's core and cluster procurement. We're currently hosting in-person capacity building consultations across the state. And I think so far, I think Claudia's been everywhere, and I was just checking in on her welfare this morning to check that she's taken a rest, because I think she's been everywhere in New South Wales. But yeah, we're visiting each region across New South Wales before the 25th of November. And then, of course, from the 25th of November, we've got the 16 days of activism, so it's a bit of a kind of go, go, go situation. But again, Claudia is here if you want to network with her and ask her any questions. And these are the remaining sessions that we have across those next few weeks. I won't talk to that too much, but again, you can just see that obviously if you've got any queries, you can reach us at coreandcluster@dvnsw.org.au. And again, please do have a network with us if you've got any queries in the break. Last couple of updates. I know there's been lots of updates today, but just a few other things we're working on that are really important to us as a peak body as well, is the homelessness for over 55s inquiry report recommendations. We were really, really pleased that in the Standing Committee on Social Issues report that was tabled last month, there was 40 recommendations, 11 of which came from Domestic Violence New South Wales. So it's really good to feel listened to and heard. And obviously, those recommendations come from you. That's the work we do with you as our members and those services to ensure we have an evidence base and we can be quite clear about the things that we need to see for over 55s. So those are some of the key recommendations, again, around the consideration of the establishment of a funded specialist homeless housing information and support service for older people that comprises both an early intervention and crisis response, similar to the Home at Last model in Victoria. We want to see increased funding, funding of the construction of new social and affordable housing specifically for older women, dedicating one of the already funded core and cluster refuges to pilot services for older women, reviewing opportunities to increase social security payments, including an increase to the Commonwealth rent assistance, and consider lowering the age limit of access to the Housing Elderly Persons Priority Group for 80 years to 55. So those are some of the key recommendations. Again, if you're keen to hear more, Livia, who's worked really hard on that, is also here at Domestic Violence New South Wales today, and she'd happily have a chat with you all about that, or if you want to see a copy of our submission, let us know. Ongoing advocacy for women on temporary visas, and again, I'm so pleased my colleagues here from Muslim Women Australia, I know they've been really key in some of the advocacy and work we've done on this issue. Really pleased to see in the national plan this reference. More needs to be done, but that's something that's really important to the peak body. This marginalised cohort do not have access to refuge and transitional accommodation or social and affordable housing. Currently, many refugees are forced to make the tough decision to turn women away on temporary visas as they do not have the income. And I certainly know through my work in the UK, this is the same situation there, and it's just not acceptable. And they're still, I've been in Australia for 8 years, and they're still dealing with the same issues over in the UK now in the service I used to work. So many of these women have Australian-born children who, through no fault of their own, do not have access to housing, and many do not have access to early childhood education. And again, we've spoken about children today, and those, we want to be promoting the best possible life chances for children and young people, and we need to make sure that their considerations are taken really seriously as well. So there are crucial early intervention services to keep children who may be experiencing domestic and family violence safe. They need to be at the forefront as well of this advocacy. So lastly, the last couple of things, there's so much going on at the peak, I can barely come up for air, and I've got so much to get across, of course. I think I'm 5 days back. But ongoing advocacy includes something that we want to talk about, which is the lack of acknowledgement of domestic and family violence in the flood inquiries, and we'll continue to advocate on that. Sadly, there was a lack of acknowledgement of the impacts of domestic and family violence in flood-affected areas on victim survivors and support services in the New South Wales Government response to the independent flood inquiry. So that's something, again, we'll be talking to the government about, and that's something that's really key when we think about disaster recovery in that gender lens. We really need to ensure we're seeing domestic and family violence considered. We're also doing some work on Residential Tenancies Act. There's an upcoming submission. We've got a survey out at the moment, which we'll make sure, again, we plug in our weekly sector news this week. The New South Wales Fair Trading is conducting a statutory review of the DV provisions of the Tenancies Act. Alongside Women's Legal Service and the Tenants Union, we've created a survey, as I've just mentioned, and we're trying to gather some information now. So again, if you want to have a quick chat in the break, I can make sure we'd love to hear your thoughts and views on that. The review will look at whether the domestic violence provisions in the Act have provided enhanced protections intended for victim survivors and determine the changes needed going forward. And then finally, the Women's Housing Roundtable. We just wanted to say that was such a brilliant roundtable with so many wonderful services. We co-hosted that with the Women's Housing Forum alongside the Greens MP Jenny Leong, Shelter New South Wales and the Older Women's Network. Featuring a range of peaks and leaders in the space, it was an opportunity to discuss the advocacy for the future. And one opportunity right now is to advocate to your local MP, write call message on socials asking them to support the No Grounds Eviction Bill, which will come before the New South Wales Parliament this November, but only if there's enough community support. So that's the No Grounds Eviction Bill. Please, please, please do write, call or message your local MP about that. So I know I was quite speedy, but I'm very aware that there's been a lot of talking at you today. But it's so wonderful to be back and see people face to face and not on screens as well, because I think my era of domestic violence in New South Wales has pretty much been screen stuff. So good to see you all, and thank you so much for having me today, and thanks to all the previous speakers.